Welcome back to another Serial Killer Saturday. Today we stumble into the mysterious voodoo killings of Clementine Barnabet. Clementine is believed to have been born around 1894 in St. Martinville, Louisiana, and moved to Lafayette in 1909. She was born into a two-parent household and lived with her mother and father, Nina and Raymond, and one brother, Zephyrin. When she was 17, she joined a cult called the Church of Sacrifice, which prompted the start of the murders that she committed. Raymond, her father, was reported to be abusive to his family and very aggressive. The Barnabet killings followed a consistent pattern. Barnabet would often murder entire families rather than one singular person. The murders were all done with an axe. It was found that Clementine would cut off the heads of the victims, and once she had butchered the entire family, she would then lay their bodies in bed together and leave them to be found as such. Barnabet's killings occurred between Lafayette, Louisiana, and Texas. In February of 1911, the first of many murders were committed. Walter Byers and his family were murdered. This launched the investigation to determine the killer. The authorities' first suspect was Raymond Barnabet. The Barnabet family testified against Raymond, and they all recounted him leaving town that night for unknown reasons and returning home late with blood and brain matter on his shoes and shirt. Zephyrin, Clementine's brother, stated that when he returned home, Raymond was bragging about the murders that he had committed and said that the family deserved it. During the time Raymond was being investigated, more killings occurred. In March of 1911, the Cassaway family was murdered. This caused a twist in the investigation because the family had a white mother, unlike the previous two families, who were all African American. Raymond was thought to have committed all three of these massacres and was soon arrested and sent to Lafayette Parish Jail. While Raymond was awaiting trial, another family was murdered. In November of 1911, the Randall family was murdered in a manner similar to the previous slayings. This confused authorities because it raised another suspect. The police then decided to investigate Clementine Barnabet. In the Barnabet residence, a man's suit with blood and brain matter all over it was found in Clementine's closet. This prompted police to arrest Clementine as a prime suspect, along with her father, of the numerous murders committed in the area. When initially arrested, Clementine denied all connections to the murders. Even then, the murders did not stop. In January of 1912, 3 more families were murdered. In the third instance, when Felix Broussard, his wife, and 3 children were killed in Lake Charles, Louisiana, the killer or killers splayed the victims' hands apart with pieces of wood and left a handwritten message on the wall. Some sources say the message was written in blood. Others say it was in pencil. Either way, the letters spelled a spooky sentence. When he maketh the inquisition for blood, he forgetteth not the cry of the humble. A version of Psalm 9:12 in the King James Bible. The message was signed Human 5. The number in the signature led people to think a band of murderers was at work, and it also lent the group a nickname picked up by the press. The newspapers had a field day and seized on the idea that the murders were connected to a voodoo ritual. The El Paso Gazette published a story on the Broussard murders, titled, "Voodoo's Horrors Break Out Again." The story suggested the crimes were connected to a human sacrifice that took place as part of a voodoo ritual and emphasized the idea of the number of 5 as somehow having ritualistic relevance. 6 members of the Wexford family perished at the hands of the fanatics, but one was an infant that had only been born the day before the tragedy, and in all probability had not been taken into consideration when the plans for the human sacrifice were consummated. The reporter for the paper wrote, "Now comes the Brousseau tragedy, with its 5 victims, thus completing a series of sacrifices of 5 separate families, each evidently intended to have involved 5 victims. These numbers were not entirely accurate. The victims' counts in a particular family ranged from 4 to 6. The El Paso Gazette was one of many to run with the voodoo angle. After their story hit newsstands, several local papers also printed the possibility that the murders were connected to voodoo. Around the same time, rumors were swirling that Clementine was the leader of some kind of cult called the Church of Sacrifice, which was supposedly led by one Reverend King Harris, a Pentecostal revival preacher with a small congregation connected to the Christ-sanctified Holy Church. Police took Harris in for interrogation after rumors of religious involvement ran rampant, but the Reverend had never heard of the Church of Sacrifice and was visibly shaken to think that his sermons could have possibly inspired a series of bloody axe murders. Eventually, investigators would get at least some of their answers. On April 5th of 1912, Clementine made a full confession, admitting to 17 murders. She claimed she bought a voodoo charm meant to protect her while committing her crimes, and said that she and her accomplices drew lots to see who would commit the murders. She also said that she disguised herself as a man to better lurk unnoticed at night. She declared she killed the children because she did not wish them left orphans in the world. Her motives for the crimes, however, were never made clear. The Lafayette Advertiser printed her full confession in the paper on April 5, 1912, but added at the end, "Clementine's confession has been received with varying shades of belief, owing to the positive way she swore in the trial of her father, and the misleading information she has given as to her accomplices." Indeed, it was difficult to keep Clementine's story straight. She had previously testified in court that her father was the dangerous man behind the murders, but they kept happening. She gave names for her accomplices, but when Sheriff Lacoste investigated them, they went nowhere. Several arrests were made, but the search for the rest of the Human Five gang was a dead end. The district attorney at the time theorized that some of these murders were copycat crimes, but he believed that Clementine was a moral pervert who was guilty of everything she confessed to. Clementine even admitted to caressing the corpses after she had killed them, regardless of gender or age. The court records for Barnabet's trial were summarized and published by the Federal Writers Project in 1942, and their account makes plain that there was a great deal of public confusion regarding the details of the case at the time. For one thing, there was probably never a Church of Sacrifice, as the papers had said. Reverend Harris had preached in Lafayette the night of the Randall murders, but was otherwise uninvolved. According to the Federal Writers Project, a state of confusion existed in the public mind regarding the Sacrifice Church, the existence of which had never been established. The Sanctified Church and the frequent arrests of the latter were made. It is possible that the words sanctify and sanctified were confused with the sacrifice after the voodoo cult rumors began to spread, and that the misinformation was spread from there. But the voodoo damage had already been done. The Lafayette population was willing enough to place blame on a nebulous voodoo priestess committing murder while leading a sacrificial sect. It didn't help that Clementine named a voodoo priest who had given the invisibility charm to her, Joseph Thibodeau. She said that he also gave her the ideas for the crimes, but Thibodeau swore that that had never happened, and that he was far from being a voodoo priest. He simply engaged in root-based medicine. One local paper explained to its readers that Thibodeau is regarded as peaceful in disposition and harmless in intention, and said that he was noted for the practice of conjuring warts away. Despite investigators' suspicions regarding Clementine's confession, the stories about her continued to circulate. Charges were officially filed against her on April 14th of 1912. While she sat in jail, she confessed to a total of 35 murders, but kept retelling her story with differing details that made it hard to know the truth. Her defense attorneys claimed that she was insane, but she stood trial and was sentenced to life at Louisiana Penitentiary at the age of 19. She attempted an escape on July 31st of 1913, but was caught the same day. Despite her escape attempt, she was considered a model prisoner. She did not, however, serve very long. According to one brief report about the prison, Clementine received a procedure that was said to have restored her to a normal condition, which allowed her to be released on good behavior after serving 10 years. However, another claim is that in August of 1923, Clementine Barnabet walked out of prison in another attempted and successful escape and was never seen or heard from again. Well, I guess this whole story really puts an entirely new spin on the song lyric, "Do that voodoo that you do so well." Careful what you wish for, am I right? If you have a serial killer you would like to see featured here, email me at duchessdark676@gmail.com. See you next time.